So good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to our webinar today. Our topic is in times of funding uncertainty, agility is everything. And I think we have a very exciting presentation today. I feel like, Dan, agility is is very important, especially during this time, right?
Yep. Yeah,
And
definitely have to be flexible.
yeah, we have to be flexible, and we're going to be spending the next hour talking about agility with regards to forecasting and scenario planning. And Dan, you've been doing, forecast, budget management for many years.
Absolutely. And so you get to see quite a few different angles of it in regards to what's happening, what's impacting things, and how do we respond? And I think between everything we're going to discuss today, I think it's going to give a good foundation for the future of organizations and how they can actually utilize those tools and moving forward.
Absolutely. So we're going to get started. We have first just a quick introduction. So I'm Bulin Tran. I'm Senior VP of Financial Solution at JMT. I'm in the DC area, and I support clients, support and in various ways with their back office accounting operations, leveraging financial solutions. So all types of financial solutions, one of which we're going to be talking about today, and it is a budget management tool. Dan, do you want to quickly introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
absolutely. Hey everyone, I'm Dan Holcomb. Been in the JMT world for a little over 5 years. Love FP&A. Been in it for 25 years almost now. Um, I've really been able to explore and see both sides, the corporate world and the non-for-profit. So I'm excited for the opportunity today.
Great. All right. Just a quick housekeeping. If you have questions, please submit your questions in the question box on your control panel, and we will answer them either at the end of the webinar, or if we see them, we'll answer them along the way. Today's recording and slides will be emailed to you following the webinar. Requirements for CPE. This is a CPE accredited presentation. Your participation today may earn you 1 CPE credit. To receive a CPE credit, actively respond to polling questions 3 out of the 4. Complete the survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar, and stay on for the duration of the webinar. If you have technical issues, we have provided an email address. You can send your issues there, or just indicate your issue in the chat box. All right, just a quick just an introduction of who is JMT. So JMT was founded in 1991 to help nonprofit achieve their mission. We work exclusively with nonprofit. Our mission is to ensure our client success. We are headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee, and have served over 2,000 nonprofits across the U.S. and a few in Canada, supporting the nonprofits' back office accounting operations with financial systems and accounting services. Our service, just quickly, we implement and support a cloud-based ERP solution, Sage Intacct. We also support another very popular ERP system, very popular in the nonprofit space, I would say, and that is MIP. We also implement and support budget management solution, one of which we're going to be talking about today, Vena. Provide outsourced accounting services. We also perform accounting operation assessment work. We assist with system integration. So some of our clients may have other systems that they need to integrate with their ERP solutions, and we support in that area as well. And also provide support in the area of grant management. So our learning objectives, learn strategies to foster a forecasting culture forecasting culture within your organization, encouraging proactive planning, cross-functional collaboration, and continuous alignment between finance and operational goals. Understand how to use modern FP&A tools like Vena to build dynamic real-time forecasting that enhance financial transparency, accountability, and adaptability within nonprofit organizations. All right, our agenda, we're gonna, understand the culture, the current funding landscape and challenges. We'll talk about the dynamic forecasting and scenario planning. What does that mean and what does that look like? We'll do an introduction of Vena as an FP&A tool. And then we'll dive right into the software and show you, what Vena looks like. So current challenge, um, you know, I think as hopefully many on in this webinar is aware that there is a shift in federal grant policies that have disrupted funding, predicted oh, I'm sorry, predictability. I stumble on that word. So, I have in the past couple of months spoken to a number of my clients, and it's unfortunate, but there's been numerous impact on clients that have federal funding, and it's across the board. Federal funding, not just with one agency, but with multiple agencies. And I think this is no surprise to many nonprofits. And then on top of that, I think many realizes also that there is also rise in operational costs as well, which impacts budgets. Um, I know we've had some other presentations that we've given where we've talked about, with the impact on funding, organizations are also looking at alternative funding options, and that in itself is also a challenge. Um, and then, of course, when you have funding impact, one of the, depending on your reserve, if you may not have the reserve to address that, the impact, and many don't. And so you look at, your cost, and your largest cost is labor. And so, there's definitely, there's definitely an impact on the organizations. Um, Dan, do you have do you have some comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, most recently, as of today, even this morning, I was on a client call, and was really brought up to me is the fact that they've lost funding from the federal and state level in regards to a certain area, and they've had to look at other resources, and now they're looking at the donations that they've received over the last month or so of land, right, and converting that into funds for their organization to actually utilize and tap into to offset that loss of funding. So, we're seeing it really appear in a lot of different angles within the organizations, and how each organization is reacting is interesting, but it's unfortunate. But we're also there to try to make sure that, what can we do to help in that process?
Yeah. And I've spoken to a number of our clients, obviously, when you have, when the size of the organization changes, meaning, as it downsize, right? You don't have the resource that you used to have. And there's obviously programmatic impact as well. One just something to share. One of my clients is actually reaching out to another organization and doing some sort of a collaborative effort, right? Meaning, from a fundraising perspective, doing a collaborative effort to try to bring in additional funding. And another client of mine has also shared with me that one of the things they're doing is that when before this they may have had funding from certain foundations, but those funding may have may have stopped, they're now going back to those organizations that have given them in the past, right? And then reaching out to see if they can get some additional fundings there. And just as example, I would love to hear from, folks that are in this, they're joining us, what you all are doing. It would be great to just to hear how organizations are handling, this situation. So, oh, we have our first polling question. So do you have a culture of interactive financial projection-based planning? So we're talking about culture of interactive financial projection-based planning. Yes, we engage with staff, management board in the planning process, and we conduct a monthly forecast. So this is, really building a culture of, building the forecast or, scenario planning or budgeting as an organization. The second option is yes, we do engage with staff management board in planning process and we conduct a quarterly forecast. So this is doing the forecast on a quarterly basis. The third option there is that we do collaborate, but we do not forecast today. So maybe you collaborate just doing the budget, but you're not doing forecasting. Or no, we do not engage with staff, management, board in planning process, and we do forecast. And then in that situation, it's where you forecast by yourself, basically. You're looking at maybe trends and things like that. And then the last option is none of the above. So we'd love to see what folks are doing today. Quarterly forecasting, right. Well, it's really good to see that, everyone here is engaging with the non-financial folks, right, within your organizations to come up to do the forecasting. But ideally, I think that if you have funding impact, ideally, I think everyone should be doing monthly forecasting. So why annual budgets aren't enough? So, so statistic or annual budget lacks flexibility to handle sudden funding changes. I think that based on what people answer, I think folks realize that you do need to do forecasting and that doing a 1-year budget isn't enough, right? Current budget is already outdated as soon as it's completed. And especially now when we're in sort of uncharted territory, right? There's also a lack of real-time data hindering timely decision making. Forecasting allows you to see how things are happening right away, and so one of the comments I always make is, you want to accelerate your month end close so that you can look forward and so you can do these forecasting. I think it would be more meaningful. But you would need to look at how you can accelerate your month end close process. And then current budget does not reflect current state. So this is the reason why we need to do forecasting. Honestly, Dan, it's not just forecasting, right? It's also scenario planning.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, especially with Vena, we're kind of gonna illustrate today is the fact that, you know, we see it day in and day out. And I know nobody is, kind of excluded from it is the fact that things happen, not only just within organizations but in our country and everywhere else, that we have to respond to, right? We have to be very knowledgeable what's going on around us and how it's going to impact us at the end of the day. So with those scenarios, better whether it's a best case scenario, worst case scenario, whatever it may be, even just from an investment standpoint, hey, we've got these stocks that have been donated to us, and how can we really profit from them and get money back into the organization so we can do our mission. So those are a lot of those moving pieces that we, especially with a product like Vena, we can look at and say, hey, how can this impact us and how can we come out of this ahead?
Yeah, I would say sometimes what I hear from organization is that, they do the forecast quarterly because it's so hard to do forecasting. It's so much effort to do forecasting, right? And I think the key here is you want to invest in your process and invest in your technology so that you can do these things. The tool allows you to do it and allows you to do it and allows you to collaborate and do it monthly, which is if you didn't have a budget management solution, I think it would be very, very hard to do it monthly. All right. We just passed this polling. Okay. Um, Forecasting and scenario planning are critical. Absolutely. Federal funding uncertainty demands proactive financial planning. I think the fact that we have a high number of folks here to do forecasting, I think folks realize that you really do need to you do need to forecast, and not just do the budget once a year. Um, Continuous forecasting allows nonprofit to adjust budget in real time, because with forecasting, right, you're pulling it actuals up to a certain point in time, and you're projecting what that the remainder of the year might look like, right? And one of the things that I talk about is the funding pipeline. What does your funding pipeline look like, right? And you'll have a list of your funding, and then you're gonna determine the percentage that some of these fundings will be coming in, because they might not all be coming in, right? This is your pipeline, and then you'll have to determine, is it 70%? If you feel like 70% chance that you're gonna get that funding, so you're gonna not only need to list your funding pipeline, but also determine what's the percentage of that funding really going to come true for you. And then based on that, what would be, it's not just looking at the revenue side, but also then the expense are associated with that, right? The direct cost, or programmatic costs is associated with that. Um, Scenario plan, this is where I think scenario planning really plays the key here, because you're not sure how things are going to pan out, right? So you could take a look at, if this was to happen, what would happen, right? How would it alter the picture? So scenario planning tests what if scenario, allowing organizations be prepared for contingency planning. And then finally, forecasting and scenario planning as needed, which we all agree here, it should be done. Forecasting should be done monthly, should be done quickly and frequently. So frequently meaning on a monthly basis is what we're suggesting here. And it should be done quickly. So the process can't be taking people like 2-3 months to do a forecast, because then it's not going to help the organization. So we need to identify what are the major areas for purpose of forecasting. And now we're not looking for accuracy here, but we're looking at, where do we think that where the shortcoming, where are the risks, where do we think we're gonna be at the end of the year. I came across this from McKinsey. It says here, organizations using scenario planning are 70% more likely to maintain financial stability during economic downturns. So I think in the situation where we are in, if you have funding impact, I think doing whether scenario planning or forecasting, I think it's crucial. Just thought I'd share. All right, we came to our polling question number 2. What tools do you use to manage your budget process today? So we've got Excel. Mars is another budget management solution. Sage Intacct, if you're on Sage Intacct, Sage Intacct also has its own budgeting solution. FP&A solutions such as Vena, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Adaptive Profits, they're all similar tools. Other, or not sure. So we'll take a look at what folks are using today. Give it a So majority are on Excel. which Excel is great. We'll talk about where Excel fits in. Are you surprised by this, Dan?
Not at all. And again, I mean, even the calls that I have had recently, majority of them are on Excel. They're realizing the frustrations though with it because broken formulas, consolidations is time consuming. There's so many benefits of Excel, but then there's also hindrances as well. That cause problems, especially when you're sending out templates to all these different departments to do their inputting, and then all of a sudden somebody decides they're going to fat finger and change a formula, and then that's all she wrote, and then your budget now is not as accurate as it should be.
Yeah. And by the way, I just realized I didn't share the results of our first polling question. I will say the majority of the people here, I don't remember the percentage, but more than 50% of the folks here do quarterly forecasting. But if you're on Excel, that's pretty tough. All right, other factors to consider. It is important to create a culture of interactive budgeting forecasting. It has to be, part of the organization's culture because there's a lot of work to do whether it's budgeting or forecast or even scenario planning. So that you've got to have that culture in place to do that interactive budgeting and forecasting. Um, Historical trend analysis cannot be substitute for inclusion, interactive planning that actively involve an organization's non-financial managers. And honestly, given the situation we have today, I feel like we're in uncharted territory. The last time we were kind of in this kind of situation was COVID. And Dan, I don't know about what your thoughts. I don't think COVID and where we are today are similar in any way.
No, there. I think again, yeah. I think what you're saying is the fact that it's really almost like a heads and tails situation because there was ways that we can respond, and it seemed like it was going to be an ongoing thing over multiple months, if not years, with a pandemic like we went through. But it seems like it's more instantaneous, so we're having to kind of react a lot faster, and so it really does point back to not being able to do your forecasting or really do your scenario planning at the time that it's, prevalent or important, and having to, waiting 2, 3 months down the road for that information to come to fruition is not, feasible for organizations to really be sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just think that those situations are very different and really don't have any historical trend that you could use to help you, chart forward. And then review pipeline for all revenue sources now, and link it with strategic plan. So you want to see how, what's in your pipeline, profitability, and how is that impact? How does it tie back to your program? Um, Consider cash basis forecasting. Now, I'm gonna fess up. Most of the budgeting that I work with clients are all on accrual basis, but you know, this I was just thinking about this because um obviously when you have funding impact, cash is really, really important. So if where you are in terms from a cash flow perspective, right? What are your thoughts on cash basis? And what do you think about cash basis forecast? Do you work much with cash basis forecasting?
I'm going to echo what you're saying in regards to accrual because I would say 99% are doing it on their accrual basis right now. But because cash is king and is going to become a vital aspect of an organization, that maybe that shift of, thought process happens, just even if it's, minimal, at least to kind of get the exposure, to see, how is it going to impact the organization, instead of looking at things from like kind of like a 9,000 foot level, but more at
Yeah.
a granular level.
Yeah, I do feel like cash is very important. And one of the things I've come across is that a lot of when I implement solutions with clients is that not everybody is leveraging payment terms. I've got clients that as soon as a bill comes in, it gets paid, and I think that, you may want to just make sure that you are taking advantage of the payment terms. A lot of ERP systems, allow you to manage those payment terms. And if 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 it makes sense, maybe even renegotiate your payment terms with your vendor. I mean, the whole point is that you want to make sure you hold on to your cash as long as you can, leveraging those terms. So, depending on your relationship with your vendors, you want to see what you can to renegotiate those terms. The next item we have here is clear understanding of the budget impact and have proper communication plan. So as you're forecasting, depending on your situation, you want to make sure you have proper communication plan with everyone in the organization. I think that is so critical. And then the last item here, accelerate financial reporting and month-end close. So it is a month-end close. It's not a year-end close. So I think it's really critical that you try to get the numbers out, because you wanted to be looking forward and not spend too much time looking, in the rear view mirror. All right, we just went through that question. All right, so we'll just do a quick introduction to Vena. So Vena is a cloud-based FP&A platform that leverages Excel familiarity, supports budgeting, forecasting, and reporting, strong integration to many ERP solutions, including Sage Intacct, centralized data, automate workflow, scenario modeling, and real-time dashboards. So Vena does a lot, but but I just want to mention that one, I think, really important feature about Vena is that it sits right on top of Excel, which is, huge for organizations that, are using Excel today for their budgeting, forecasting, and scenario planning. So so Vena, in terms of a platform, allows you to bring in data from different data sources. So you can see here, Vena's integration capabilities is that it can integrate pretty much anything and everything. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, for the most part, and with the API connectors that are out there right now and the ones that are being developed nonstop, it does allow for a lot of data in a repository, basically, if you really want to get down to it. And the fact that Vena can hold that information and then you can actually tap into that information, that's being really updated as frequently as you want. Typically, it's overnight is how we usually set up those schedules. But the reality is in the event that you want to get that information in even sooner or more frequently, you can do that as well. But again, it's having all of that information all in one spot to make that those really educated decisions and choices in the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, when we think about budgeting and forecast, we think a lot, we think about the accounting system because there's a lot of data in the ERP system, but it's beyond that, right? There's a lot of other data that factors in to do this type of to do these forecasting and planning. All right. So easy to use platform. It sits right on top of Excel. And what I've mentioned to clients is that this is very powerful because in a sense, you've got maybe a couple of people in the accounting department, but you have a lot of people, that are non-finance people that that are already familiar with Excel, and the fact that it sits on top of Excel, it makes that adoption, right, even easier. All right, our third polling question is, do you struggle to get non-finance staff to contribute to budget and forecasting? Let's see what folks say. Hopefully the answer is no. We are going to continue on. Hopefully we'll get a response soon. So
That
I am going
I
to.
was anticipating that. Yep.
Oh, there it is. Oh, the answer is yes.
Yes.
I was hoping the answer would be no.
No,
So majority says
I
yes.
see this in everybody I communicate with, that non-finance people just they think it's just a number on a piece of paper
Yeah,
at the end of the day. So
yeah. Well, hopefully this platform can make it, easier. So I am going to transition to you. We're going to be looking at revenue and expense planning, forecasting, personnel planning, scenario planning. We're going to cover as much as we can. Obviously, we don't have limited time, so this is going to be a very general overview. But I am going to stop sharing so you can share your screen, Dan.
awesome. Thank you so much, Bulin. You share my screen with everyone. Appreciate everyone's time today. This is Vena at the end of the day, right? This is where the contributors, the end users, come into the platform, and kind of, really start engaging and collaborating with everyone else on the team. This is what we refer to as the contributor tab. This is kind of gives you your to-do list, if you want to call it that. You can see that I have some wonderful red up here, which indicates that obviously I'm past due on some things. But again, it's keeping things in rhythm, keeping things on a timeline. Reverting back to what Bulin said earlier about, getting forecasts done quickly, accurately, with valuable information, at a drop of a hat is critical. So what we're going to do is we're going to bounce around a few little templates today, and then we're going to look at maybe one or two reports, and just kind of so you guys can see the familiarity and how this entire system works. We're going to jump into kind of our expense area right now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're literally going to go in and kind of like a library. We're going to go in and check out some options in here. I'm going to check out the first template, and that's going to be in our operating expense template. Okay, so what's going to happen there is it's going to download a local file on my machine, an Excel file, but it's going to flag me or kind of alert me to say, hey, what options do you want to do when you come in here? And as you can see right now, I'm picking a year. I have different options in here. If I want to go look at maybe multiple years down the road, if I want to, I can also do different scenarios, right? So right now we're going to just mess with the budget today, and we're going to apply that selection. Okay. What you're going to notice is as that selection is applied, all of that data is being pulled in from the repository of Vena. Okay, so none of this data is being stored on your local machine. It is all being stored by Vena, and it's literally being really compartmentalized, kind of like a Rubik's cube. So you have all these multiple intersections of where the data is getting housed. And it's a really cool function of the Vena environment because it really does allow for data to be kind of like stored and then pulled out and in different ways, similar to like a massive pivot table kind of, but probably a little bit more robust. So as you're going to see in here, we have a standard operating expenditure template. Okay, so these are our inputs. Okay, so the way we kind of build these out, these are all customizable based on what the client's needs are. But we're going to expand some of these columns just so that we can kind of see how everything kind of comes together. We are at what we call the bottom level inside of Vena at this point. Okay, inside of Vena, we budget, we do everything at the bottom level when it comes to inputting information inside it. And you're going to see here that we have the capabilities of actually, in this template, of selecting ways that we kind of want to do a driver, right? How do we want to spread our dollars, right? From a budgeting standpoint. You can see we have some seasonality. We've got some evenly if we want to put it in. We get a lot of different options. Again, these are just small little samples of what the capabilities are inside of Vena. Okay, remembering that Excel is the front end for the Vena information, is really key to this, because anything you pretty much can do in Excel, you can do it inside of the Vena templates and build and bring to fruition. Okay, so just for example purposes today, we're going to just plug some numbers in. You can see that I've got an input selected here, but in the event if I change one of these to something maybe a little bit more specific and say seasonal, you're going to see that those numbers will automatically populate for me. So again, you're reducing the risk of a formula getting altered by somebody that you're pushing out a template to by something with a tool that is actually going to be pretty well locked down and keeps them from actually modifying that information. So they're going to simply come in here and just change these numbers. For example, on this one, if I wanted to go just a straight 10,000, you can see immediately how my numbers are going to be saved or at least updated inside my template. And when I go to save my information back, oh, I didn't save it, right? One expense out, I exceeded my 20%. What does that mean exactly? What that's telling me is that I have a expense account that has over the threshold limit of 20%. Okay. So it's not going to allow me to save. So these are some of the triggers that we can actually put inside of here that keep us from actually saving information and maybe saying, hey, over budgeting something that really we shouldn't be budgeting at that level. Okay. So if I,
Hey, Dan.
yeah,
Well, I was looking at this, there's a lot of data here,
yeah,
and what I'm seeing is that the 2023 data, like January through October,
yep,
those look like they're actuals,
you are
right?
correct. Yep,
And then and
absolutely.
then and then the forecast is November and December, and this is where you can put what the forecast would be for the last 2 months. And then you are also, while you're doing that, you might be looking ahead and planning a budget for the next fiscal year, it looks like, or calendar year.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, correct. So really at the end of the day, in this template, this one single template, you're doing a lot of things really at one point if you want to, right? So again, because this is Excel, we can control what is in kind of like in play at this point, right? So we can see that yes, we do have a rolling forecast. We have our actuals through October, and then we have our last two remaining months that we're going to populate with our numbers that we feel like are going to be really kind of our best guess based on, so that way we can kind of figure out how we're going to end the financial year, the fiscal year. And then we're going to look ahead, right? We're going to look ahead to that budget for the following year and how do we want to kind of attack that? Do we kind of mimic what we've done this past year? Do we just kind of start over, right? Do we come up with a new methodology for that budget approach and say, hey, instead of me, having seasonality or basing it on prior year data, it's a brand new budget line, right? I've never had this in here before. Maybe I need to kind of just play it by ear and put some numbers in and go that route, which again, all of that customization can take place inside of these templates and allow the end user really a lot of kind of variables for them to work with and to get a very, a budget that is very well built.
Now on the upper left-hand corner, it says the sales. It looks like it's the Department 10,
Yeah.
whatever is Department
Yep.
10 and location, correct?
Absolutely. Because when I came into my template, for example, you can see even here, I'm going to have the ability to choose where I'm actually doing this, right? But because inside of Vena, we also have permissions set up so we can actually direct people to specific areas of the organization that they're responsible for. Some of that stuff is already preloaded for them. So when they come in, they're not going in and budgeting for something that maybe is in development, right? And in New York or in some other Chicago or some other area, they are being forced to go into an area that they are responsible for them to spend their energy and their time to really be efficient and getting an accurate budget slash forecast or other scenario as close as possible to what it needs to be.
So if I was a nonprofit, I'm looking at this, okay, and I know that it's a challenge getting people to help and forecast, like what was it? 70% of the people have challenged in terms of getting the non-financial people in. I'm looking at this, I'm gonna say, wow, this doesn't look anything like what we do, like our Excel template doesn't look anything like this.
Mhm.
So how do you bridge that gap, Dan, in terms of getting people to
Buy
easily and
in.
quickly adapt?
Yeah. So one of the cool things about Vena is that we can literally take most existing organizations templates, right, that they're currently using. We might do some modifications just to kind of make sure that everything works and ties out like it should, but we can literally can layer that and bring that right into the Vena environment. And really it comes down to what we call mapping. And we map those intersections, right? And that's where you're not changing things 100% or 180 degrees on these individuals. You're giving them the same front end experience that they've had maybe over the last year or two. And we can slowly incorporate some changes, right? So this is just a snippet of the availabilities of templates and so forth inside, and what can be done inside of Vena. And so utilizing what organizations are used to, there's nothing wrong with that, but also understanding that change is inevitable, and trying to get people to adapt to that, not necessarily all at once, but maybe over a 3 or 6 month period of time is critical, because that's how you're going to move the organization forward, right? You can't continue to stay stagnant and be in that same position you were 3 years ago and utilizing that same kind of like tool or methodology, because it's not going to work with how fast things are changing in our society today.
Right, great. And I know we have limited time, but how easy, I mean, we're looking at an operating expense you know, template here. How easy is it to do forecasting and scenario planning? Let's
Sure.
just say,
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do is what we do inside of Vena is actually we check this right back in. So if I say, hey, I'm finished with this template, I'm just going to simply say, hey, I'm not going to save anything right now. We're just going to go ahead and submit it right back in and go ahead and turn it back in. And you'll see that just like I said earlier, like a library, we're going to check in, check out. So any type of forecasting now, so there's our rolling forecast. We can go ahead and check that one out if we'd like to. And we can say, okay, let's go in there and start working as well and see how we can make improvements or changes there. And you're going to see a lot of similarities in these templates, because at the end of the day, that's the whole idea. You don't want to go into a template and then all of a sudden it's a totally different view and you're not sure how to handle things. But again, this is a very refined selection box here. I can go into a specific department if I so choose. I can then go in a specific year, a period, and also a very specific scenario. So in this case, I'm going to pick the forecast, right? So we're going
and
to
in that filter, I could add program, right?
absolutely,
I
you
could
can.
add, maybe I could do it, I could do the forecasting for a particular grant or project
Absolutely. Absolutely.
location.
1000%. Absolutely. And again, you're seeing a lot of similarities here. We got our drivers again. That field is still there. We've got our driver values that we're going to spread and how we're going to manage those dollars. We've got our manual inputs as well. So you can see that, again, this is our forecast for the next coming up year based on the month that I want to start in. So in this scenario, I started with October. And basically what it's doing is it's saying, hey, go grab all the actuals from the prior, period, last 12 months, bring those in for me based on what I've selected on my entry, and then give me that ability to say, hey, how do I anticipate this current fiscal year ending? And maybe you've got something in here that says, hey, I've got $11,000 September, actual that came in here underneath our, looks like our travel expenses. Is that something that we need to plan for this year in September? It gives you that visibility. It gives you that clarity of saying, hey, what's really going on here? And another thing you can actually do in here, if you want to do some little data inspection, is if I want to go down and say drill transactions, I can actually go into that and see what those transactions are, right? So we're pulling this information in from our source, our ERP solution. We're getting all the granular detail information so we can say effectively, hey, I've got plans to go out to, maybe I'm going to Fort Worth again, or maybe I'm going to Charlotte. I've got a trip plan, or maybe whatever it may be. Those pieces can be brought into that forecast, because let's be honest, we are juggling so many different things now in this day and age that we have to have some guidance. And this is one of the valuable tools in here, is that we can set up these tables on the back end that will hold all of this valuable information from all of those different resources that we talked about earlier. That brings all those, connecting those dots and brings everything together.
Yeah. We do have a few questions here.
Sure.
I think the first one here is, I think this is meant to be a comment. So someone said they're using Vena and Excel, just starting Vena and have not completely left Excel. So basically, I'm assuming that they're basically in Excel doing this budgeting with the Vena front end.
Yep.
Um, and then a question here is, can we get this presentation email to us after? Yes, we will send the PowerPoint um, to you. And also, the presentation is recorded, and you can get to this presentation from our website. Um, and then we have a question: as AI becomes more integrated with Vena, how many iterations of a forecast scenario should be run to get the AI to learn the organization?
That's a very good point. And Vena has a phenomenal AI tool, which is called Vena Copilot. It does follow suit with the Microsoft Copilot and utilizes really the same logic because obviously we see Excel as our front end inside of here. But if I was to click on that Vena Copilot tab up here, you're going to see that even inside of here. So if anybody is familiar with really how AI works, the more references it has, the better the solution will be at the end of the day. So as more times that this information is getting asked for and more information is being asked of the system, you can actually just come in here and this is just some prime examples right here. I can create my own, where I can say, okay, give me a scenario variance report or a profitability report. I would like to see a high level revenue variance report by month for 2024, right? So now you see how fast I just did that. Let's see what that report looks like when I bring that down. And this is also utilizing what inside of Vena is called the ad hoc reporting feature, which is actually a really powerful tool because it allows you to really make edits on the fly. Okay. So in this case, you can see, yes, does it match? In theory, it does match, but do I have the actuals or the income or the revenue that I'm anticipated here? Well, it just depends. What am I looking for as far as my entities? I've got all of my departments. Let's just see. Maybe I've got some stuff missing in direct revenue. Looks like maybe it's all there. Again, I have the ability to just automatically update all this information. Go back here, refresh my data to see if it pulls anything in. Not on this one. Let me just try something real quick on a different report. Let's close that one real quick. No, I don't want to save it. Let's go back to our open. Oh, not that. Don't want me to do that. Apologize for that. Let's start again and let's just do a profitability report. See if it'll pull it up on this one. There we go. Let's pull this one down real quick.
So I know we're starting to get short on time. I'm gonna say that AI is just amazing tool, right? I mean, it's Vena is leveraging Copilot. There's many solutions out there that are leveraging the solution as well. Are we
Yeah, my filtering functionality is messing up on me, so we'll go back to that at some other point. But
okay?
again,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very robust tool in the aspect of Vena, so it does give you a full picture of the productivity and the overall aspect of the organization. So it's really becoming something valuable for a lot of our clients.
Yep. And another question we have is it downloading a new file to the computer each and every time you check out an item?
Absolutely. Yes, it is. And the reason being is most people don't realize this is that, even though these files are here, your administrators or your managers inside of Vena potentially could go in and make a modification to that template at any given point in time. So we want to make sure that you have the latest and greatest version of that file. So what happens is every time you actually go out and check out that file, and for example, I'm going to pull out with that workforce planning one. As soon as I do that, it's pulling down a new version of it to make sure that I, number one, am utilizing the new version, but also number two, that if I'm picking a selection that potentially is maybe my department sales, for example, this is a good example. This now has locked down this area of the system so that way somebody else can't go in and download the same exact template and actually go in and make edits to, say, sales division 10 or department 10 because I'm in there currently doing it. So what this does is it prevents anybody from overriding somebody else's work at any given point in time.
That is very important. I wouldn't want to know that my number has been changed by someone else.
And go ahead.
So another question we have here is, can you do individual program budget that then roll into a summary sheet?
Yeah, absolutely. So no different than if we're looking at different departments. Like prime example here, we're looking at the sales department. You could do a program. You could do this by grant if you want to. We've built some very robust tools for grant management inside of Vena. It allows them to actually kind of build their grant budgets based on not just what they anticipate from a funding, but also all the expenditures that are going to be eating into that funding, and then ultimately have that summary level, right? So, and that's where I think another piece of the Vena platform really shines is that when you get into the reporting functionality, and we're just going to look at this one real quick. Let's look at the dashboard real quick, the executive dashboard. Again, it's where the data is all coming together, right? The reports are designed to be complete and grab all the aspects of the organization. So as you can see in this example right here, we've got a lot of our different areas of the organization, not just financial, but operational, HR area. You're going to see that I'm pulling all my entities, all my departments, and we're going to apply that selection. And you're going to now see all this information get populated as we go through. And so again, as I go through all of that information, so whether it's a grant, whether it's a program, whether it's a department, all of that information is going to get pulled in. It's being stored on the Vena cloud. It's then going to get brought into these reports based on how they're built. And then it's a very visible representation of how the organization is operating and where they intend to be, whether it's 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, 18 months, or long term.
Yeah, this is very powerful. And obviously, if you recall how data is connecting the dots, so, while we're dealing with numbers here, it can pull data from various data source, which really this is one of the reasons why it makes this such a powerful system. And the just one other comment I want to make is I know that we're not going to be able to show everything. Obviously, we only have another couple of minutes left. But if anyone has questions or want to see, more of the solutions, just reach out to us, and we're happy to, provide a more in-depth presentation for you. Um, do you have another minute, maybe just to show maybe
Sure.
workforce planning?
Yep. Let me go ahead and close the report real quick. This workforce planning tool is probably one of the most comprehensive ones I've seen in a long time. But it pretty much tackles and brings in every aspect of a position or an employee on the organization. You can feed it in with a lot of controls. So whether or not you have your merit increases, all your benefits, all of that can be housed separately in a different file. And then you can see in here a lot of my grayed out areas. For example, my merit increase. Hey, I don't want them to manually come in here and override that 5%, but I have the ability to set that in my inputs or my controls. So maybe HR is going to do that on their end. And then over here on this side, it's going to be somebody in this department, sales, for example. They're going to manage their employees. And then they can say, hey, I'm going to have a salary change of, say, 7.5%. I can do an annual salary, have an override of their total salary right here, and utilize that 170,000. So I do have kind of like an override if I want to. But as you see, we can expand this. There's a lot of granularity inside of these fields that are showing you how literally how this can be brought in. Are they eligible for benefits? So all of these flags, all of these validation, areas, points inside of these templates really are driving all those other calculations that are going to happen that you're not going to have to do manually anymore. Okay, the system's going to do it for you, store those informations, those pieces, and bring all of that to the picture that you're looking for, whether it's a budget forecast or any other scenario planning.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Um, I think, yeah, I think we've addressed all of the questions. And I know we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything else, Dan, that you wanted to show before?
No, I mean, I think really at the end of the day, I think it's very visible how robust Vena can be. It is a powerful tool. The organizations that I work with on this utilize it to the fullest extent, and they love it. If they're passionate about it, they're able to get their information literally in time, and they're not waiting on information to get uploaded. This information again is syncing over constantly, however frequently you want it to be in here. So you're able to really provide those results instantaneously to that leadership to make those decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, if, I am, and so are you, I think, Dan, a fan of doing monthly
Yeah.
forecasting.
Yep.
And without some sort of a tool to help you manage through that process and and it's not just, a platform for people to utilize, but it's also a platform to help you collaborate, right?
Yep.
It allows you to collaborate and bring people together to formulate the forecast. So this is great. Thank you.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So we have our last polling question, and I'm going to move on. All right, so this concludes our presentation. I hope everyone was able to get something out of this presentation. And we are very active when it comes to our webinars, and we're always looking for topics to share. So if you have some suggestions, please reach out to us and let us know if there's a topic that you would like us to present. We welcome all feedbacks and suggestions. So we have a few upcoming presentation. Is your legacy system holding you back? So yes, there are many organizations that are running, legacy systems. There are these systems were very popular, back in the I don't know, late 80s, 90s, and many organizations still run them. And so we'll talk about some of the differences between these legacy ERP solutions versus some of the more modern cloud-based solutions. So that's on July 22nd. Simplifying ERP data integration for nonprofits. So in this presentation, we'll talk about how data can be integrated, leveraging a tool called Data Blend. And then in August, we'll have the What's New with Sage Intacct R3. So if you're on the Sage Intacct system, you'll know that Sage does these quarterly releases, and we go through we have these webinars where we look at what are the new features that are released by Sage. And our presentation is, since we only work with nonprofits, are specifically geared toward how nonprofits can leverage on these new features. So, if any of these topics interest you, please sign up. We welcome everyone to participate, and I believe that is it. I think that, yep. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for attending our presentation. Hopefully, like I said, you got something out of it, and I wanted to thank Dan. Thank you so much, Dan, for the presentation, and thanks everybody for attending. We hope to see you soon. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.